my name is Trinity and welcome to my channel. If you're here to talk about books because that's why I'm here, to talk to you guys about books. Now, in today's video, I am going to be talking to you about the books that were released in 2020 that I did not get around to. So these would be my most anticipated releases that I just didn't get a chance to get my hands on or didn't get a chance to sit down and read. It could have been, I couldn't find them, or book shopping has become a thing that I don't do a whole lot because of COVID. So any number of reasons could account to why I didn't get around to these. But let's start with my favorite genre, horror. The first book that I was excited to read that I never got around to would be The Deep by Amakatsu. And it is a book about the Titanic, which I happen to actually really love books about the Titanic, stories about the Titanic. I love Titanic, the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. And I'm going to be reading you the synopsis from Goodreads on most of these. Hi, Drake. Hi, baby. Aww. Okay. So here's the synopsis from Goodreads. This is the only way to explain the series of misfortunes that have plagued the passengers of the ship from the moment they set sail. Mysterious disappearances, sudden deaths, now suspended in an eerie, unsettling twilight zone during the 4 days of the liner's illustrious maiden voyage. A number of the passengers, including millionaires Madeline Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and maid Annie Hebley, and Mark Fletcher. They're convinced something sinister is going on, and then the world knows. Disaster strikes. Years later, the world is at war, and a survivor of that fateful night, Annie, is working as a nurse on the 6th voyage of the Titanic's sister ship, the Britannic, now refitted as a hospital ship, plagued by demons of her doomed first and near-fatal journey across the Atlantic. Annie comes across an unconscious soldier she recognizes while doing her rounds. It is the young man Mark, and she is convinced that he could not have survived the sinking of the Titanic. Sounds really good. And so I love stories about the Titanic, and I really think that this will be a very gripping, very haunting novel. I just never got around to reading it. Okay, the next novel that I didn't get around to reading in 2020, and this has a little bit to do with the release date of it, but it is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danford. And this is actually marketed as a horror comedy. So I'm really intrigued by that aspect of it. But it says, our story begins in 1902 at the Burkhardt School for Girls. Flo and Clara, two impressionable students, are obsessed with each other and with a daring young writer named Mary McLean, the author of a scandalous best-selling memoir. To show their devotion to Mary, the girls establish their own private club and call it the Plain Bad Heroine Society. They meet in secret at a nearby apple orchard, the setting of their wild happiness and ultimately of their macabre deaths. So, the book continues over a century later. The now abandoned and crumbling Burkhardt is back in the news when wonderkind writer Merritt Emmons publishes a breakout book celebrating the queer feminist history surrounding the haunted, cursed, Gilded Age institution. So the combining of these two things sounds like it would be a very fantastic read. I've heard very good things about it, but because of the publication date, there were so many books that came out that I just never got around to reading it, and I'm hoping to pick it up in 2021. The next book that I want to talk about is Mexican Gothic. I never read it. I know I said that I was going to and that I would probably finish it by the end of the year, but the Year of the Witching won out over it, and I love Gothic horror, so I'm just really interested to get into this. I feel like BookTube has talked a lot about Mexican Gothic, so I'm not going to go into detail about what that one's about, but know that in 2021 it's going to be at the top of my reading list. Okay, the only young adult horror that I have on my reading list is also another Gothic horror, and it is Horrid by Katrina Leno. And Again, it's a book that BookTube is obsessed with, so I feel like I don't need to go into too much detail. Just know that this surrounds a haunted house or a creepy house, so very gothic, and we're dealing with mental health, and I really love stories that make you wonder, is the supernatural happening, or is this person mentally unstable? And it's a trope that I love through Gothic horror. And so I really want to read this because it speaks to me in a way that most Gothic horror do, but it's young adult. So I'm very interested to see how young adult takes these tropes from Gothic horror and runs with them. Okay, and the last book on this horror list is The Holo Places by T. Kingfisher. A young woman discovers a strange portal in her uncle's house, leading to madness and terror in this gripping new novel. Pray they are hungry. Kara finds these words in the mysterious bunker that she's discovered behind a hole in the wall of her uncle's house. Freshly divorced and living back at home, Kara now becomes obsessed with these cryptic words and starts exploring the peculiar bunker. This sounds like it's going to be horrific. And I'm always looking for a book that will scare me. And so I'm hoping that this will. It is one of those books where it could flop hard because of my particular taste, but I also really think that it could be really interesting to get into. Okay, now for the sci-fi books that released in 2020 that I did not get to, that I really want to read. The first would be Eden by Tim Levin. So this is an eco thriller, which is why I think I will highly enjoy it. In a time of global warming and spiraling damage to the environment, the virgin zones were established to help combat the change. Abandoned by humanity and given back to nature, these vast areas in a dozen remote locations across the planet were intended to become the lungs of the world. But there are always those drawn to such places. Extreme sports enthusiasts and adventure racing teams target the dangerous, sometimes deadly zones for illicit races. Only the hardiest and most experienced dare to undertake these expeditions. When one such team enters the oldest zone, Eden, they aren't prepared for what confronts them. Nature has returned to Eden in an elemental, primeval way. And here, nature is no longer humanity's friend. That sounds absolutely fantastic. I really want to get around to reading this, and I think I will absolutely love this because, I recently this year discovered how much I like sci-fi, and this sounds completely up my alley. Okay, now on to an author that I am quite familiar with, Kate Elliott. I have read quite a few books of hers, and so Unconquerable Son. This is a series. I'm really excited about that, and it's a gender-swapped Alexander the Great on an intergalactic scale. Princess Sun has finally come of age, growing up in the shadow of her mother, Irene. Has been no easy task. The legendary Queen Marshall did what everyone thought was impossible, expel the invaders and build Shawana? I have no idea how to say that. Into a magnificent republic, one to be respected and feared, but the cutthroat ambassador corps and conniving noble houses have never ceased to scheme, and they have plans that need Sun to be removed as heir, or better yet, dead. It sounds really good. Okay, next on my sci-fi list is the Book of Klee. This has been pitched to me as Horizon Zero Dawn. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge fan of Horizon Zero Dawn. I love Horizon Zero Dawn almost as much as Dragon Age and Mass Effect. We won't get into how much I like Horizon Zero Dawn. Let's just say that. But when this was pitched to me as Horizon Zero Dawn in book form, I was like, yes, please, let's do the thing. I just have not been able to get my hands on it yet, so that's the reason I haven't read it. Beyond the walls of a small village of myth and rude lies an unrecognizable world, a world where overgrown forests are filled with choker trees and deadly vines and seeds that will kill you wherever you stand. And if they don't get you, one of the dangerous shunned men will. Yes, it does sound like Horizon Zero Dawn. I want to read it. Okay, and my last sci-fi that I didn't get to in 2020 that I meant to read is The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Lee's best friend went missing on Bodmin Moor 4 years ago. She and Mal were chasing rumors of monsters when they found something all too real. Now Mal is back, but where has she been and who is she working for? When the government physicist K. Amal Khan is attacked, the security service investigates and leads MI5's Julian Sarber deep into terrifying new territory where he clashes with mysterious agents of an unknown power who may or may not be human. So, it sounds like it's going to be First Contact, and it sounds really good. Adrian Tchaikovsky, I've read a few things by him, or I've been meaning to read quite a few books by him, and this is just the one that was released in 2020 that I didn't get to. Okay, and now for fantasy. My first fantasy that I did not read in 2020 would be A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I do have a little bit of a back and forth relationship with Naomi Novik and where I can decide if I like her or not. And the Tamarier series I have been gifted, and I do plan to read those, so I'm excited for those, but this is the one that was released in 2020 that I did not get to read, and it has been talked about all over BookTube, so I don't really want to get into it, but it is a dark academia where graduate or die is pretty much the premise of this novel, and so I would like to read it, maybe, hopefully, I don't know, we'll see about this one. Okay, the next one on my list is A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Perry. And this says, a sweeping tale of revolution and wonder in a world not quite like our own. A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians is a genre-defying story of magic, war, and the struggle for freedom in an early modern world. And it goes into details about the Age of Enlightenment and stuff like that. So it's magic and politics tied into one, and I really think that I would enjoy a story like this. It came up on my NetGalley, and I never got the approval for it, but every time I went back and looked at it, I was like, oh, this sounds so good. So it sounds like it's going to be historical fiction and fantasy tied together, and I'm down for that. Okay, the next one on my fantasy list is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. In 1893, there's no such thing as witches. There used to be, in the wild, dark days before the burnings began, but now witching is nothing but tidy charms and nursery rhymes. If the modern woman wants any measure of power, she must find it at the ballot box. Sounds up my alley. I've heard such good things about this book that I really want to read it. All of the reviews have been pretty much rave reviews. I haven't heard anything bad about this. It's at a 4.17 on Goodreads, so that bodes well as well. And I just want to get my hands on this novel. Is it because there's witches in the title? Probably. But those are the books that I wanted to read in 2020 that I did not get around to reading. These were some of my most anticipated reads of the year that just didn't get my hands on or wasn't able to pick up at any given time in 2020, or, it had to do with the release date and I was reading so many other things. But I hope you have enjoyed this list, and I thank you for watching. Have a great day.